Hello, everyone. This is Brian Bush. Welcome to Freedom Mentor Thursday Live. I am Brian Bush, and we are coming to you live this time around, unfortunately, without Phil. Phil is asked me to take the reins tonight. He is actually at a very big game for his son, and one of the things we say around here is family comes first, and so that's what Phil is tending to. Is he is tending to his family. But we are going to be having a lot of fun tonight. We're going to cover people, paperwork, and profits. So thank you for joining us. If you are in the chat, go ahead and let us know where you're coming from. Where in the country are you joining us from? I see Chuck from West Virginia. That's great. All right, California. Tom, good to see you. We got Wisconsin represented. Venice, Florida, Philadelphia. All right. Polk County, Florida. All right, we are spread out. Washington. I'm assuming that's Washington State. Texas, the state that I'm in. Great to see you there. Christy from Navarro County. All right. More from Florida, Charlotte, North Carolina, Massachusetts. We are spread out. Great to see you tonight. Hopefully, you're going to be patient with me because I never realized how much Phil has to do behind the scenes clicking buttons. But we're going to make it happen. And we're going to hopefully get a lot of feedback from you all tonight. And I hope you're going to have a great time and learn a lot at the same time. Because a lot of what we're going to cover are some of the fundamentals that you may think differently of when you think of people, paperwork, and profits. Because without the first two, you're not going to get to the profits. So we're going to cover a lot on that tonight. Still got people joining in. That's great. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Great to see you, Rosalind. Cheryl from South Carolina. Jacksonville, Abby, great to see you here tonight. For those that are just joining in, Phil is attending his son's soccer game. If I recall, he actually coaches the team. So it's a big game. Hopefully they're going to see a big win tonight. But he will join us back again next week. We are focused on people, paperwork, and profits. So we're going to get going here. Let me see if I can get my screen shared so that we can dive into it. And away we go. All right. So I already told you the topic, people, paperwork, and profits. That's what we're focused on. And we're going to start with a quick question. Let's see if I can get to the next slide here. Now you're going to see how good I do at this. There we go. Let's ask the question, what properties make the most profits? Now, hopefully, let's see if I can get this out of the way here. All right. Hopefully, you guys are able to see. Yeah, there you go. You can see me and you can see the question. That's wonderful. So, in the chat, let us know what properties do you think make the most profits? And let's see if I can get us to work. All right. Is that going to be properties based on, well, we should be seeing pretty quick. There you go. Is that going to be based on size, location, type? And what I mean by that location, right? Is it all, we've all heard the adage location, location, location. Real estate is all about where you do deals. So is it being in the right city? Is it working in the suburbs? We oftentimes talk about finding the sweet spot, right? Kind of the honey hole for your area where you're going to get the most deals. Is that working in the heart of the city? Is that on the outskirts? Maybe in the rural area is where you want to be working. Is that what's most important to making profits? Is it the size of the property? Do we need to work on bread and butter, 3 bedroom, 2 baths? Do you go with bigger properties? Do you go with smaller properties, at least 1,000 square feet? Got to be in a good school district, things like that. Is it the type of property that you're focused on, right? Do we just keep it to single family? Should we work with mobile homes? What about multifamily? Or maybe you're going to work with ADUs, additional dwelling units, and that's a great investment. Maybe you're working with raw land, right? What is most important to you? Let me jump over to chat. and see what we have coming in here. All right, value add opportunities, commercial properties certainly can be very important. Location. So we got some votes for like location. Tom is asking, you won't get to the profits till the second year. Okay. Well, that depends. But again, we're looking at what should you be focused on? What kind of properties are going to yield you the best profits? All right. So we'll give everyone some time to answer in the chat there. So let's go back and see if I can get my controls working again and hit the button here. So this is a bit of a trick question, right? Yep, I'm tricking you right out of the gate. So what you noticed in the three P's that we had, people, paperwork, and profits, what we didn't mention properties. Why is that? Well, because it's not about the property. It's first and foremost about the people. So let me see if there we go. It's not about the property. It's about the people. Real estate is a people business. And what you're going to find is no matter how many properties you look at, and we'll have apprentices let us know, hey, I've got this property. Someone contacted me. It's this, it's this, it's this, and this. Wait a minute. Hold on. Have you spoken with the seller? You haven't spoken with the seller. Well, hold on. You've got a property, you've got a piece of real estate, but what you don't know is, do you have a motivated seller? If you joined us in previous week, you know that part of the paradigm shift that we're trying to help a lot of you understand is that we don't approach real estate in kind of the more traditional way, where it's all real estate agents and just kind of the way even standard investors are going to approach things. We take a different approach here. We're very much working with the creative side. We're not looking for properties by competing on MLS or at auctions and things like that. We work directly with sellers. We work directly with motivated sellers. And so the number one thing you're looking for is, of course, a property that we'd call off market, but you got to talk to the seller. You got to find out what's going on with the seller. Is there an opportunity here? Because that's where we find the ability to create a deal, right? As we talked about, good deals are created. You've got to do the work to understand whether there's an opportunity here. And then we've got to learn how to do that. And if you're brand new to real estate, you may not know how to do that. That's what we do. We teach our apprentices how to ask the right questions, how to understand whether there's an opportunity here, because that's what you're trying to determine. And a lot of that is going to be determined by, does the seller have a problem? That's a lot of who we work with in this business. And we're going to meet a great couple tonight. They're going to be joining us before long. Bryce and Julianne, they've had a ton of success with us. They graduated from this program, which means they've made over $500,000 in net profit. They've gone on to do lots more deals and are absolutely masters of their market. But they had to learn this as well. And they're going to talk about people and paperwork, because without those two, you're never going to get to the profits. So let's keep moving here. Really, what I want to impress upon you here is the paradigm shift, that this is about people, not just property. Of course, you have to have property. You have to have the right ingredients, which means you need to talk with the seller. So hopefully that's not something that seems overwhelming. You can look at thousands of homes, but if you're not talking with sellers, and really before you even begin to negotiate with sellers, oftentimes you're going to find that there's some challenges. So let's talk about that. What do you think are the biggest challenges working with people, right? Is it that these are sellers that haven't necessarily spoken with a real estate agent, so they may not know too much about real estate, right? Oftentimes we'll talk about, does the seller speak real estate? What does that mean? Well, in other words, is the seller versed in what they're doing, right? We talk with sellers that, I mean, they've studied the market, they've kept an eye on things, kept tabs on things. They've actually reached out to a real estate agent and gotten a CMA. They might have even ordered an appraisal. I mean, they're on top of it. They've checked all the AVMs, the automated valuation models. I mean, they're all over it. And then you have other folks that just learned this morning that they've got to move. They got a job offer and they got to have this happen yesterday. Maybe unfortunately they're facing divorce. Maybe someone in the family has died and they just inherited a property and they just can't deal with it. They need to get it moved on. You're going to run into lots of different kinds of situations, and this is people. That's the common denominator. And so you may look at it and go, well, wait a minute, I'm not the greatest people person. You don't have to be a great people person necessarily, but as you learn this business, you're going to find that a lot of what we focus on is solving sellers' problems. And of course, you can't solve it until you first understand it. So that's really the simplest thing that we do before we focus on property and how many bedrooms, baths, and square footage and where it's located and all these additional things between location and size and type. We want to know about the person, right? We want to talk with the seller and trying to understand is their motivation. And that's what we train our apprentices to do. So again, back to the question, what are the biggest challenges that you perceive in working with people? So let me jump over to the chat. If you're in the chat, go ahead and put in there, what do you think is the biggest challenge in working with sellers? Now we've got some coming in here. Straightforward transparency, excuse me, with clarity, right? So in other words, is the seller shooting you straight? Are they kind of dancing around? They don't want to give you all the details. We certainly run into that. We especially when we see sellers that are kind of playing the cards close to the vest. They don't want to give away any details. All right, what's the address of the property? Oh, I can't tell you that. We run into that too. That really is a reflection of a lack of motivation, right? I shared, I think, last week when sellers come and they need our help, I kind of liken it to someone's bleeding. And when you're bleeding, you need help. You don't necessarily care who helps you, just help me. Can you help me? And that's a lot of the times what we're running into are folks that have an out of the box problem, right? They don't have the opportunity to go to a real estate agent and get the lecture about all the things they need to do to their house to make it perfect, and then they can list it and they can wait around and let people come through for weekend after weekend and do some open houses and eventually get absolute retail property. There are plenty of sellers that do just that, and that's what they should do. However, you are going to run into people that absolutely don't have time. They need this done yesterday. They stumbled into the problem or ended up in it one way or another, and they need help. And this is where we're just talking with people to understand their situation. So we've had Ricky mention motivation. Absolutely. Some sellers not being honest, getting the runaround, right? That's a great one, Christy. Again, connecting with the seller. Yeah, you got to be able to connect with the seller, John. You're absolutely right. And sometimes people will put information in and you're having trouble getting the information, right? So you're going to run into all those kinds of things, including, there we go. What is their why? And that's really what you're trying to get down to is what is their why? What is it they're trying to accomplish? Why they need to do it? Why are they a fit to work with you? If they're a motivated seller, that usually means they're willing to work with the types of offers that we can make. And so we have to work with them, talk with them. And you say, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to make an offer. Well, that's what we teach our apprentices. We do that every day. And we take folks that know nothing about real estate and we turn them into money-making machines. We turn them into real estate professionals. And that's exactly where Bryce and Julianne were coming from. They were in academia. They were great at science. They had careers set up they could still pursue if they chose to, but they also saw some of the limitations that come when you are in a lab. So they wanted to branch out. They knew nothing about real estate per se. They came in and we taught them how to do this business, and they absolutely dominated it. All right. No, Maurice, this is not a recording. Okay. So let's go back. Again, I appreciate your patience with me as I'm learning how to do this. So what are some of the biggest challenges with people? Well, you're absolutely right that some folks are going to be unrealistic. And that's where we go into we need to educate before we negotiate. Before you can just go in and just give people your offers, you might have, if you've been around real estate investors, been one yourself, You might have a seller accuse you of just giving them a low ball offer. And there are definitely investors out there, more again, traditional investors. They're out there competing on MLS or just cold calling everybody for Craigslist they possibly can. And they are just rifling offers. This is just numbers, 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 numbers. And the more you throw out there, you're going to find one. Maybe, but we concentrate on people. When you concentrate on people, you're going to find that absolutely they're not realistic. They may not be shooting you straight. They don't know you. They don't know if they can trust you. So one of the things you're going to have to do is build rapport, right? And there's a saying that says people don't care what you know until they know that you care. In this business, when you learn how to talk with people, just have a conversation. When you learn how to identify their problems and then learn through our help how to solve their problems, that the offers you can make, sometimes with creative real estate, can solve a seller's problem that maybe has already been to the real estate agent, and due to very low equity or timing, or maybe the property needs a lot of work, they're not able to go the traditional route and meet the needs that they have. So they reach out to an investor like us, and we're able to talk with them and size up what is going on. So as you run into these problems, again, and maybe you all can identify with this, right? Have you ever been stubborn on something? You're just, no, this is the way it's got to be. I know it. I know it. I know it. If you talk with someone that's patient, that is a good communicator, that can help broaden your horizon so that you understand more, sometimes that will change your perspective, especially if they're putting data and information in front of you. So again, sometimes we have to educate before we negotiate, because really what we're trying to do is understand what is their problem and can we solve their problem. So that's part of what we do in this business. We hold hands sometimes for people that just need guidance. We look for, can we create a win-win? Can we solve their problem? And meanwhile, the real estate deal that is going to be a win for us. In most cases, that's also creating a win for the buyer, because we sell properties very quickly. We sometimes sell creatively. And so we may be working with a buyer that might not be able to own a home were it not for lease option or subject to or something else creative with owner financing. So really that's our goal, create the win-win-win. It starts with people. Now, after we talk about people, we have to go into paperwork. Let's see if we can get this to work. There you go. So there's the next question we'll pop in there. What paperwork is necessary to do a real estate deal? Let me know in the chat if you would. Hopefully everything's still working here. Let me know in chat what kind of paperwork is needed. There we go. Abby, a sales contract. That's absolutely true. Do you use the state standard contract? Do you use any other fancy paperwork, things like that? What do you need? A lot of investors think that this boils down to, can I get a loan, right? What are the bank going to lend? Finding the perfect property to buy. A lot of what we focus on when we've first spoken with people, right? It starts with the people. If you've addressed the people side and now you're moving on to the paperwork side, we have to gain control of the property. And that may sound like, wait a minute, control. Well, no, we have to lock up our interest in the property and have the protection of a contract in order to now roll up our sleeves and do the due diligence. So sometimes we'll have some new folks that kind of skip over that. Hey, I finally found a deal. I got it under contract. And how quickly can we sell it and make some money? Hold on. We've got to do diligence. But I don't want you doing diligence if you haven't first gotten control of the property. And you do that simply with the right contract. And that may sound very simple, but is your contract going to afford you the protections that you need? If you've ever worked with a real estate agent, or let's say some of you have, let me know in the chat, has anyone here ever bought a foreclosure or maybe an REO, a real estate owned property by the bank? If you've done that, let me know that in the chat. There you go. We don't go to banks. I like it. All right, so there you go. Letter of intent, offer letter, title, sale agreement. Yep, Maurice, you're right. There's a lot of different paperwork to use. There's a lot of layers to that. We don't use a lot of LOIs, letters of intent. That's more on the commercial side. I've seen some residential folks do that. if I'm selling a property, I don't want an LOI. I want to know the entirety of what you're offering in writing because I need to know all those contingencies, all the check boxes, all the details. Signed deed. We're absolutely going to need one of those at closing. But really, to get the process started, we need the right contract with the right protections. Now, the reason I was asking, I didn't see anyone say anything about foreclosures or REOs. That's fine. But what you will note on foreclosures and REOs is if you go to put an offer on a property that is owned by a bank, they don't say, hey, yeah, when do you want to close? I'll give you a couple months. Take your time. No, they have a very specific prescribed system to do what they're doing. And in that system, they absolutely are going to require that you come in with a bunch of earnest money, that you have a very small window of time to do your inspection. You've got to come in with a proof of funds. You got to be ready to go and jump through all their hoops. Usually, they're going to ask you to pre-qualify with them. I mean, they're a bank. They want your business as a borrower. They're going to make you pre-qualify with them. Now, it doesn't mean you have to usually get your loan with them, but you do have to pre-qualify because they want to know you're a serious buyer and that you're able to. So again, we're talking traditional real estate when you're doing that. Not to mention these are properties on MLS. And if you've joined us before, you know that's very much on market, and therefore you're competing. You have a lot of competition, and maybe one and got there first, but you better be ready to jump through the hoops. You're not going to have the luxury of a contract that affords you plenty of latitude to really get to know the property. You've got to be able to move very, very quickly. If not, they're going to move on to the next buyer, and you probably might lose your earnest money in the process. Now, if you've joined us before, who knows the number that we usually give as earnest money? If you've joined us before or know some of how we do what we do, let me know in the chat the average amount we use for earnest money. All right, Maurice says 1%. All right, that's traditional. John, Abby, you're all over at $1. And I know a bunch of you don't believe that. It's absolutely 100% true. I approve contracts all day. 99.9% earnest money is $1. Now, I've talked to plenty of attorneys and real estate agents say, who in the world would do that? Who in the world would take $1 earnest money? Someone motivated that doesn't have all the time in the world, doesn't have time to jump through everyone's hoops and do it perfect. They need this done yesterday. And when you can build rapport, you can explain how you can solve their problem and you move on to the paperwork because that's the next step. They just need to know where to sign. They need to know when they're going to close, what they're going to get at closing, how this is going to work high level so that they can continue putting out the other fires in life that they currently have right now. So that's a lot of what we work with, but it starts with very simple paperwork that affords you the opportunity to do your due diligence. Because if you don't do your due diligence, you may not want to buy that property. We definitely put properties sometimes under contract that turn out not to be deals that we want to purchase, but we have the protection of the paperwork to find out, right? We're going to do inspections. We're going to make sure that we have checked title, that we know the neighborhood, we know the comps, everything else. So a lot of times what I will share with apprentices is we start out, we're making offers in good faith, but then we have obviously the protection to get in there and really get to know every detail about the property, make sure that that win didn't just look like a win on paper, but it's one that we can follow through and be successful with, right? Do we have the exit strategy? It's going to make sense to get this deal done. And a lot of those deals we're not doing tying up a bunch of our cash and credit. We're using creative methods subject to owner finance. We might even be reselling the property before we even take title to it. So there's a lot of techniques that we have that our apprentices are able to utilize and see success, get to the profit. But it comes down to, again, the people and the paperwork. That's where you've got to start. Let's see here. Okay. Now, before we bring Bryce and Julianne on, let me see if I can go to one other piece here. Again, I appreciate your patience as I learn how to do this. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing because we've been through that and we're where we need to be. All right. So hopefully you're seeing that when you get those two items, as simple as they may sound, there's a lot of details to it. But when you get those in place, that's when you're able to get deals under contract. You get the people on track. You get the paperwork on track, and now you're able to get to the profits. And we're going to bring out Bryce and Julianne. Hey guys, how are you all this evening?
We are doing great.
Awesome. Awesome. Great to have you guys here. Now, for everyone joining, Bryce and Julianne, again, they joined us many years ago, but you guys took about 2.5 years to graduate, right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And all credit goes to you, Bryce. What you did an interview with us, and one of the things you mentioned in that interview, this business comes down to people and paperwork, and you're 100% spot on. And I'd love it if you'd share with us some tonight, some of what you all experienced, because again, for those that don't know, you all have an academic background. Y'all are great at science. I mentioned the other day I try to do homeschool science with my kids, and I'm just floundering trying to get as much as I can on track. And you guys would be laughing, but you guys know science, that's your background. But tell us, why didn't you continue down that road with science? What brought you to real estate?
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to find just something else that we could kind of do at the time that would allow us to have more flexibility, more freedom with our time. We had been in academia for most of our lives up to that point, and we loved what we were doing research wise and everything. But we could see that our lives were kind of going, a slightly different direction. We wanted to build, have a family, and we didn't quite want to be pigeonholed and have to sit in an office, at a kind of a standard job, as they call it. And both of us kind of had like an entrepreneurial kind of spirit in us too. Not that you have to have that necessarily, but that was kind of a bug in us a little bit too. We looked at many different things that we could invest in. Stocks. I don't think cryptocurrency was really on the radar at that time.
No,
Bitcoin, all that stuff, right? But there was other things we were kind of, looking into. But real estate eventually just stood out as something that made perfect sense from many different angles. People need a place to live in. They need shelter, right? Food, shelter, and kind of water, kind of the fundamental things. But um, so in terms of long-term kind of security, if we're going to invest a lot of time and energy into learning something, building something, we wanted it to be insulated from potential economy swings, from things that weren't, that were kind of outside of our control. There's a lot of people that like, I remember learning how to code, starting to learn how to code when I was, in high school and such, thinking that, oh, this could be a good path to kind of, go down, become a really good coder. And at the time it kind of made sense. But, as time went on, we're kind of seeing with AI and stuff too, a lot of people that learned how to code really well, and there might be some people on this call too that did as well. But things change. The world is really changing rapidly, and the one thing that has stayed true, and I'm so glad that we decided to go into real estate investing from the beginning. It still works. The same processes work. So it's just a great business to be in. So
That's
we're very
great.
thankful that we found Freedom Mentor from the get-go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you guys, being in academia, you did a ton of research. So, as you said, you looked at a lot of different opportunities. Real estate is the one that stood out. When you
Mhm.
went into it, did you think, hey, we know how to do research? We now you didn't, I think you guys started about 2019, right?
2013.
It was before then. It was before
Oh,
then.
okay.
It's around the
Wow,
same
that's right.
thing,
You guys been at this a
2013.
long time.
Time flies. Yeah, we've been so at 2013. I think we found Phil initially in like early 2013, maybe late 2012, something like that.
Okay.
And it took us probably about a year and a half to kind of like doing our research, right? We're not
Yeah.
just the type of people that's like, let's make a quick decision. We study everything. So we've got to explore all the holes, plug all the holes, they're leaking through, and just okay, this is the one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it took us a while to kind of decide, but
Yeah.
that's when we started.
Wow. Okay. So when you say you weren't looking at cryptos, because what was that, right? What was
Uh,
crypto back in 2013?
Yeah.
It was a different environment in a lot of ways. You definitely weren't asking AI, right? So you guys did the research, spent a ton of time researching. you arrived at Freedom Mentor, and Phil in his videos, I know you mentioned one of the courses that he had at the time to educate in real estate that you went through. So you spent a lot of time doing your homework. What made you think that you needed a mentor versus just, go make this happen? You guys, you're smart people. You can go follow directions and make things happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely that temptation, but it was like the more we looked into it, the more we were like, oh, there's a lot we don't know. And we had a lot of background in the science of like how the earth and the world works, but not in how to like at that point we hadn't even bought our first house as a couple. We were living in like an apartment. And so we knew nothing about buying houses. And then the more we looked into it, we were like, oh, well, what happens if this happens? And what do we do if this happens? And so it was like this big thing of like um, just realizing how much we didn't know and how many things we could run into that we wouldn't know how to handle on our own. So definitely finding a mentor was really important.
Got it. So as you came into the training, and obviously you guys dove in, you're all about doing research and learning and so forth. So you dove into the training. Is it what you expected it to be? What was it, maybe not as in depth, maybe more in depth? What were you anticipating?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember exactly how I felt when we first got okay, when I think when we first got started in like a week or two into the program, we got this big mailer in from you
Mm-hmm.
guys, and it was
So
this nice big binder, full of all this information, which is, like the best gift you could give any scientist, right? Nerds. So we were like, looking through this and soaking up all the information. So that was just part of it, though. And so that was, it was like clear that we'd already done kind of a research. We trusted Phil. We'd found different things on YouTube and stuff like that. It's a little bit different now, but he had a lot of great stuff that was out there, and he's got a great YouTube channel. So I think we found it through there. And then that was just part of it. But there's the coaching calls that we were able to get plugged into,
mm-hmm.
and there was an outline blueprint, that gives you the step-by-step process of what to go through, and as opposed to, there's a lot of programs out there, and we had actually tried a few even before Freedom Mentor that didn't quite work out for various reasons. And then it was just a very different experience working with Freedom Mentor. But yeah, it was just it felt like almost like a small kind of family unit. There was, you're not going too big, you really are great at just about working with the people that are in the program, and just making sure everybody's taken care of and have the resources that they need to be successful. And so there was plenty of opportunities to hop on coaching calls,
Mm-hmm.
talk about deals that we were working on, get feedback pretty quickly there.
Mhm.
And then the just lots of different trainings that were integrated that just made the process just work really well for us.
And one of the differences that I would imagine between science, which is very much data and understanding formulas and understanding how to apply, and then you start experimenting with things. But in this business, you can go through the training, and there's a lot of theory there. There's a lot of here's how this technique works, and here's how this strategy would work. But now you've got to mix that with people in real life and people's real problems that aren't always cookie cutter and the same because that's one of the things I've always contended in this business. The reason this will never be a boring business is because you're dealing with people, and people are unique and quirky and strange and fun and weird. And what's that country song? God is great, people, beer is good, and people are crazy. We meet a little bit of everything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you're going to see that the people side of this is always a twist. So what was
Mm.
that for you all? Did you all come in thinking, hey, that this side of thing even does it even exist, or is this just finding properties? How did the people aspect of this business first kind of get clear to you all?
I think initially we had no clue that Because like usually when you think of real estate, everybody thinks of houses and contracts and the MLS and land and agents and then when you're actually doing the business, it's like those pieces are there, but they take up so little of the time. Because usually it's the time we spend is sure we run comps, we spend time listing our properties and all those things, but the talking to the people, meeting them, figuring out what is it that they actually need, how can we make things work for them, make things work for us. That is honestly the time that's what takes up the most time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Was that a challenge for you all? Did you feel like that was really causing you to step out of your comfort zone, or did you embrace it?
Well, for me, for me,
I mean,
I was
between the two,
definitely out of my comfort zone.
so yeah, I was I enjoyed the talking to people part, the people part of it, honestly, and because we were kind of working together, we were able to kind of take pieces of the business that each of us kind of had strengths and weaknesses in. But I mean, if you're running the business right and you are actively listening to these people and truly focused on solving their problem, you don't have to be the Tony Robbins of people. Like, you don't have to have these super skill sets working with people. You're not trying to pull the rug out from underneath them with these weird sales tactics. That's not what it's about. It's about
Right.
actively listening to them and really focusing on their situation and solving their problem. And then you help your apprentices build the tool sets to
Mhm.
kind of solve that problem. But like Julianne mentioned, a lot of the time is really spent on actively doing the business, learning how to talk to people, how to communicate, how to listen, what questions to ask. If they say this, what do I say?
Mhm.
Do I pause? Do I wait? Do I respond immediately? Right?
Yeah.
There's all these little nuances. And I mean, no like you can't like buy a course that can teach you just this just on paper. It's something that you really need practice in and actually doing deals and then talking to a mentor that has seen the backside, the backstage. Like, you're just seeing the actors up front, but you have to kind of know almost 10 steps ahead as to what's going to happen and what could possibly happen, so you can kind of avoid the pitfalls. And that was really one of the biggest reasons why we joined a program like this, like with Freedom Mentor, is to kind of shortcut a lot of those potential headaches that you can kind of run into. It's a wonderful business, and you can, if you have some money saved up to kind of start something like this, you don't want to have it just all go to a situation where you suddenly start hating real estate. That's not a good position to be.
Right.
So it's a wonderful opportunity to we viewed it as a wonderful opportunity to kind of invest our money in a system that we felt very confident it would work.
Mhm.
It did.
Right. Well, and you recognize that there's a whole lot you don't even know what you don't know. And so, like you said, if you're going to invest your time, your money, your valuable efforts towards something, you wanted to make sure that it was you're efficiently getting to where you want to go, not spending your time reinventing the wheel, right? Which is
Absolutely.
really, really important, no matter what your endeavor. That's why Phil will always point out, it doesn't matter what you're doing, find a mentor, find someone that's been there first that can help you avoid the pitfalls, as you pointed out. Now, one thing I love that you brought up, we're not in this business out there to take advantage, to try to talk people into things. This isn't super sales skills. I'll point out it's not Jedi mind tricks, right? This is understanding someone's problem. And we talked about last week, I know you guys know Dave, we talked about good guys finish first, right? That you can do this business the right way and take care of people. And in his case, it was really, really important. I know you guys are in a larger metropolitan area. Dave is in a smaller area where his reputation is all the more paramount, because bad news travels fast and can absolutely torpedo everything that you've worked on, which is why we don't approach deals like we're trying to retire on any one deal that's going to, we may have a deal that makes six figures. I know you guys have seen those, but that's not going to be every single deal. And it's not trying to squeeze everything out of every single opportunity. It's recognizing, what does this seller need? What is it that makes the most sense? I oftentimes will tell new apprentices, and you guys might be able to identify with this when you're early on and you're nervous talking with someone. I was talking to a student this morning on a call, and I've talked to some sellers, and I don't know that any of them are motivated, but I'm just not sure if I'm ready. And I said, if you had a family member that called you right now that said, "Hey, I heard you're doing real estate. I've got a problem. My wife and I have a problem. Can you help us?" Right? The natural thing that we would all do, because now this is a friend or family member we care about, we just listen. We're not worried about how are we going to do it, because we know how we have resources, right? We have coaches. We can get the answers we need. We're not worried about that. We got more techniques than we know what to do with. It's not that. We need to first just listen, right? The Lord gave us two ears and one mouth. I need to just listen to what's going on so I can get my arms around the situation. And if my friend or family member asks me a question I don't know, I love the answer. Hey, that's a great question. My partners can answer that. I'll get you the answer. Don't worry about it. What about this? What about that? And you just keep asking questions to understand what the problem is because you genuinely want to help someone. And you can take one of the things you guys alluded to. I think a lot of people have probably heard of neuro linguistic programming, NLP, and all these techniques, and they get very, very in depth, and there is a place for them, no doubt. But I've also seen a lot of people that try to study all those things and they so mechanically try to apply them that compared to someone that's just comfortable and kind of just talking with someone, that whole adage, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. At that point, everything it just gets comfortable, right? It's no longer some strange, am I saying the right thing? And like you said, do I need to pause here for longer? And when do I do this? It's just, hey, I'm talking to another person that needs my help potentially. Is there a way for me to help them solve their problem where it's a win for them? It can be a win for me. I can win for a buyer, a win-win. That's what we're looking to do. So as you all started doing more of that, getting more comfortable, getting the reps in, did that get easier to the point that maybe some of your mindset shifted into the helping people part?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do remember after a few, I still remember the first deal that we did, and it wasn't a very, we had been working for a while and kind of doing our research and stuff in tandem with building the business, which is why it took us a little bit, longer to actually graduate from the program. And once we got the first deal closed, it was like kind of the floodgates kind of had opened for us. It's like this is real.
Yeah.
And we heard it, we heard on the calls, other deals, other students closing deals and such. And we were just trying to get that, that first deal kind of closed. So it was kind of a magical kind of moment. And then from there, it's like it just became more like we saw what was possible. It's just there's some mind shift that happens when you do something the first time, right? And then as we started to build up a little kind of cash reserve, a little bit of a war chest, so to speak, to kind of, it wasn't really that big, but just some money on the side, right? They could roll back into marketing and know that we were comfortable living. We could pay our bills. We had, several months covered now, right? After closing the deal, at least. And then we can approach a deal knowing that we're not kind of stressed about the little nuances of different things. We've gained experience, and then if we don't get this deal, it's okay. We've got other deals in the pipeline that we're working on, and that just creates a little bit more of a natural kind of approach when you're working with somebody. You can really dial in and focus on just that specific moment with that seller, as opposed to thinking, I got to get this deal. I got to get this deal. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to feed my family, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's that, I guess, that financial piece of it too, that helped once we got a few deals closed and we could focus. It did kind of help from there.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That piece, your first deal, and I know Phil mentioned it when we talked, every graduate we talked to, everyone's most memorable deal is their first deal. Now, there's always, which is the deal that stands out the most, that made you the most money, and maybe we'll have time to jump into y'all's deal that had people around the block trying to see the property, but because that was obviously memorable. We talked about that in the interview. But this concept of people that come in, they need help. You want to help them. You've read all this, you've done the training, but is this real? right? And I mean, I know I've done the training, but is that just a good sales pitch and it sounds good, but is it really going to work? And it's hard to make a seller an offer, especially like you said, you don't have the financial backing just yet, a bunch of money in the bank. And wait a minute, I'm making a cash offer. Uh, I don't have the cash. And suddenly you start getting nervous and you start wondering, am I misleading people? And we go, well, wait a minute. If this is a deal that would qualify for fast cash, hard money here, no, you can absolutely do that all day. And as long as the diligence checks out, we can tell you all these things, but it's not until you do it that it, as you said, it becomes real and you just shift, your momentum shifts into another gear because you now believe what you've
Mhm.
been studying and preparing for, and you finally get over that hurdle of is it real in your own mind? And this is where we talked about a few weeks ago self-sabotage. We've seen people that have problems with money and they put roadblocks in front of their own first deal because they aren't ready to make a bunch of money. Like you said, enough money in a deal to have several months of income sitting in the bank. For most people, that is a life-changing event. And for some people, they're not ready for that. They literally have negative associations with money. They're not ready for it. But once it occurs, this is real. You begin to see the power of what you can do to help people. And suddenly everything's just moved to the next level. You start building that momentum. And again, back to what you mentioned in the interview that I shared earlier, our whole topic tonight, people and paperwork. If we could for a moment shift over to the paperwork side, you guys were academia. I know you know how to get into details. Was the paperwork something that was kind of overwhelming? Is it what you expected? What did you guys think of that?
Hmm. That's all
Um,
good.
I guess for us, we definitely wanted to understand everything in it so that like if someone asked a question, we wanted to know what they were talking about in our contracts and stuff. So there was that piece. But it wasn't like the standard contracts are like the contracts we use aren't necessarily super confusing or overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because once you're at that point that putting something on paper, it's that's like the easy part. It's like once you've got the yes from the person and you've figured
Right.
things out, you're just writing things down and moving on.
Right.
You want to add?
Yeah, and it's somewhat of a filter in a way. Once you get to the paperwork part, if the seller's truly motivated, we can have all the clauses in there that we want to kind of help us. But really, our end goal is to get the deal done and help the seller. If you're truly working with somebody that you've explained the process to, you've been transparent with them about what's going to happen, they understand the timing, the logistics, you've worked out access, whatever things you need to kind of negotiate to kind of make the deal work. At that point, as Julianne mentioned, it's just about putting that down on paper. Hopefully by that point, you kind of already talked about it. Now, when we first got started, we didn't know the ins and outs of all the things that we had to kind of, discuss with the seller ahead of time. So there's, you kind of try to get something on a contract, you get some objections, a little bit of back and forth.
Sure.
But we did want to understand the contract as best we could, but you guys were great about coaching us through how to walk somebody through that contract.
Yeah.
And if you're working with a motivated seller, someone that really needs your help, it usually is pretty simple just to kind of, go through the paperwork with them. They just want to make sure that their problem's being solved ultimately. So
So, and again, guys, if you're in the chat and you have a question for Bryce and Julianne, feel free to pop it in there. But let's go back to I see all these inputs of dollar, and I know there's some people on here that are going, nah, you can't get a property under contract for dollar. Did you guys do some of that?
I don't think we got anything under contract without using a dollar.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah,
And
no, it's
and
no,
is that a big deal, or is that just kind of like not even the issue? It's more just what do we do next, right?
oh, it's definitely an after. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, that's not the focus, right? If someone's asking about earnest money up front, it's a ding ding ding. It's a signal that okay, this is either someone who's experienced in real estate, or they have someone whispering in their ear, like an agent perhaps, coaching them through what to ask. Or in this kind of day and age, they've gone to ChatGPT or some AI. What do I
Yeah.
need to do to kind of make sure that, Bryce and Julianne aren't going to screw me, kind of thing, right? So there's going to be
Sure.
a whole spectrum of people, but I mean, when I'm talking to a seller, like, we rarely get asked about the earnest money or have an objection about that. It's really to make the contract legally binding, and it's and that's it. It's an afterthought. Again, they care about us solving their problem. So
Yeah,
That's it.
the only time that we really, like, sometimes if someone's really asking about earnest money, it's like Bryce was saying, it's a signal, but sometimes it's a signal that not necessarily that they know a whole bunch or that they're trying to like get a, it could sometimes be a signal of like they need money fast and they don't know how it works, and they think that you are going to put this amount in their pocket right away, and then it's like, okay, we have to explain how does earnest money actually work, so that they know that it's not just spending money that they get, it's held by someone else, it's not held by us, it's not held by them, like,
it's a great point.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Yeah.
times if they're asking, it's because they don't
Yeah.
understand it at all.
That's
mean,
such a great point.
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because you're absolutely right. A lot of times it's not that they're just getting someone in their ear, or they've had a bad experience. Sometimes it's just they're hard up for cash. And really, what does that do for us? Oh, we may need to move into creative terms. Well, we could do that. And so it opens even more doors, but you got to learn to listen, right? To really differentiate and understand what that is. Well, when it comes to paperwork, what it all boils down to is we've got to control the property. We're not going to get to the diligence. We're not going to get to understanding our exit strategy, much less our profit, if we don't control the deal. And so the simplicity of it is we just need to get the deal under contract. We make that offer, we lock it up, so the people, the paperwork, and now we get to the profits. And you guys obviously did that. You graduated. You've been able. You guys do this full time, and I know that you all have a. Well, he's not that little, but your son.
Kevin,
I don't think he's in real estate just yet, but maybe in the
He wants
future,
to be.
right?
He's trying to
He
help me
wants.
in every
There
way he
you go.
can. Yeah.
That's awesome. But what has your life been like after graduating with all the skills and success that you've had?
Yeah, what's our life been like since then? I mean, yeah, it definitely changed our life completely. There was a point where we were in grad school and we had to make the hard decision of, do we continue sticking with our research, finishing out our PhDs while we're trying to get, graduate from the program and continue moving through it. And we wanted to, I think at that point we were close to graduate. We were getting close. And I think you were pregnant at the time. We were about to have a kid.
pregnant.
So, and I don't know if anybody else on this call is in academia, but when you are working for an advisor, there's definitely some stress there in terms of, like, they want you to be there as much as possible, right? You're supposed to be invested into your research and be there, which makes
overnights,
sense.
weekends, holidays.
Yeah, many overnight. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
several overnights. I mean, I remember falling in my seat during some classes, like literally falling asleep. People picking me up from behind, putting me back in my chair. There was a little bit of that. So we were working, a lot of hours, and so we had to kind of make the hard choice of, do we continue doing this? We wanted to get our PhDs, but ultimately we decided to go. We've got past the point where we feel like we can support ourselves financially and then some, for sure. And we've got the confidence that we can get, do this program and do this full time. And so once we made that choice, it was like a whole weight was lifted off us. I mean, really, it was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, from that point on, I mean, we've been building our business here locally. And you guys definitely preach that, stick to your kind of, backyard in a sense. Become the big fish in a small pond, essentially. And more than ever, I think that's important. There's just a lot of competition out there, a lot of investors that want to get into the business but don't have the backing of, say, someone like Freedom Mentor to kind of help them become good investors and do good with the people that they're working with. It's a big part of it. And building a good reputation and building a company that people want to sell their property to.
Yeah.
So it takes time to build that, and that's certainly what we've been doing over many years, and it's compounded, and you see the results of your efforts, after making good decision after good decision after good decision, learning what not to do, making
Yeah.
mistakes, but learning from them. So, yeah.
And you had asked a little bit like, what's our life like, or how did it
Yep.
change things?
Mhm.
So when we made that decision to like do full-time real estate, well, Bryce made that decision first because it allowed him, because I was pregnant. It really allowed him to be there with me, be there with when after we had the baby. And now we homeschool also. And sometimes we can just, Bryce doesn't have to drive anywhere. We're all home and we just sit in the front yard on a blanket eating lunch in the middle of the week. So we have a lot of flexibility and control over our lives. That was what we wanted, and it really made it so we could do that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Obviously, we love seeing the success that you all have had. Phil would be the first one to say you're one of his favorite couples, coming through, and you work with Stephanie back in the day, and just so many great times that we had you guys coming out to live events, and hopefully we'll do more of those. But congratulations on all your success and for sharing everything. Hopefully, everyone on this call, if they're curious, will have a chance to check out your interview. And I think we'll pop, there you go. Our other Stephanie's all over it. She put that link into the chat. But we so appreciate what you guys have shared because this really, as you said, this business is a very simple one. And so the question for everyone that's listening in right now, would you like to be like Bryce and Julianne? Would you like to be able to work from home and have the flexibility and, master working with people and the paperwork and really getting to the profits that will absolutely change your life? If that's what you want to do, if that's what you're interested in, what we'd like you to do, we're gonna pop up a window here, and again, Bryce Julianne was telling these guys just how much Phil is all over this, and I'm not, but I'm learning it. So if you would like to learn more about being mentored by our team here at Freedom Mentor, you'll see a poll there pop up that you can click on, and let us know if you'd like to learn more. Let us know there. And really, what we want to be able to do is help our apprentices understand through these live events that this is a real business. This is a real opportunity. It's a real vehicle that can absolutely change your life. And Bryce and Julianne are a great example of that. They came in not knowing anything about real estate per se, but they learned everything they needed to. They got to know the people side of things. And as you said, Bryce, you don't have to use any fancy tricks or anything else. You can be very genuine, get to know and understand people and their problems, and find solutions to those, and help people and absolutely change their lives. We talked about paperwork and mastering what you don't have to come in knowing all the details of paperwork, but you got to control the property, and we'll help you do that. And then it comes to the profits, and that's what is critical. You can't get to the profits if you don't master the people and the paperwork, and that's what we help you through. So for everyone that's interested, if you click there, I am going to do one other piece. Let me go back here. If you are interested in learning more, let's see if I can find what I need to click on here. If you'd like to connect with us, the question is, would you rather connect right now? If so, we've got team members standing by that would be happy to help you. If you'd like schedule for later, again, we're flexible too. We understand you have a schedule to stick to, and we're getting near the top of the hour and we want to be able to send you home on time. If you're interested in talking with us and you'd like to schedule a, click that. We will be able to direct you to get scheduled so that you can talk to someone on our team and understand where you're coming from and what your goals are and what you want to accomplish. And you can tell us if you want to be like Bryce and Julianne. Maybe you have other goals. Maybe you enjoy your career. You've worked really hard to get where you are, and you want to keep doing what you're doing, but you want to earn more income. You want to have some more flexibility. Like you said, Bryce, you close a deal and suddenly you got maybe 3 months worth of income sitting in your bank account. That that kind of affects some of the decisions you make in life and what you're going to do this weekend, right? Now,
Mhm.
you guys have worked very, very hard to get where you are, which I absolutely love. And I know the people on this call are not looking for a get rich quick. They're looking for a real opportunity. And that's what Freedom Mentor provides. That's what real estate, creative real estate provides. And that's where we've been able to transform so many lives, just like Bryce and Julianne. I know I was a student too. I came through the program before you guys, about 5 years before you guys, and it absolutely transformed my life. I went from probably the first 7 or 8 years I was in this business, I was struggling and trying to, again, reinvent the wheel. But I finally I was very blessed to run into Phil through a webinar, and he knew how to do something I absolutely didn't know how to do. I knew he knew how to do it. I got the material. I didn't trust him yet. I basically said, "Whoa, wait a minute. I don't know if I want to tell you all about my deals, deal splits, whatever. I don't trust anybody." But once I realized the power of a mentor, I'd much rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. That finally clicked for me. And once it did, within about 6 months, I made more money than I had in the previous like 7 years combined because I had the right mentor. I finally knew how to take advantage of what was in front of me in a good way and help people and close deals, master the people, the paperwork, and the profits. And that made all the difference. And I've been blessed, as you guys know, to coach since 2009, I think it is. So we've been able to transform a lot of folks' lives. So it looks like a bunch of you guys clicked on that. That's wonderful. I'm going to end this, and I want to thank you guys for joining us, Bryce, Julianne. This has been great. If for everyone on the call or that's still on with us, if you would thank Bryce and Julianne for taking out a time of their busy schedule to join us, show them some love in the chat if you would. Thank them for being here. I'm going to bring up one other page. We're doing that. And that is if you're interested in getting started. Thank you, Abby. Thank you for thanking them for being here, Tom as well. Let me go to this page here. So if you guys are interested in getting started, you're going to see this page is going to come up, and I probably ought to hit refresh here. You're going to see this page, freedommentor.com/apprentice. Stephanie's going to pop that in. She probably already has. I don't have it in front of me, but into the chat. And Mike will have that pop up as well. But you'll go to this page. Phil has a video there, as he points out every time. That is not a background. That's it, one of his vacation rentals. But you'll fill out this information and apply. Probably very similar, guys, to what you filled out when you're getting started. But let us know, the information, what you want to do, and our team will connect with you, whether it's right now, whether it's later on. We want to be able to answer your questions and help you get started if you're looking to transform your life. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Bryce, Julianne, I can't thank you enough for coming on and joining, especially since Phil couldn't make it, but hopefully his son's team's going to win. But thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
It's been a pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. For everyone else that's still with us, if you would kindly stick around, you can watch. We're going to show some of the graduates that have been successful with our program. And you can kind of listen into what they have to say about our program as well. Everyone else, I know we went a few minutes over, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will talk to you next week. Thanks, everyone.